climate change is a super wicked problem.
From the richest countries in the world to some of the tiniest, none are spared. Droughts, typhoons, and rising sea levels have already driven tens of thousands off their homelands. If we carry on business as usual, climate refugees will soon become a norm.
There may come a time that you have nothing to adapt to.
The data paints a stark picture. The Earth is warming fast, and human actions are the cause of it. To be precise, it's our addiction to carbon. Carbon forms more compounds than any other element. Diamonds are one form of carbon, as is the graphite in pencils. It is the building block for all plant and animal life, making up 18% of human body mass. And a good chunk of carbon can be found in dead organic molecules, fossil fuels. The discovery and usage of fossil fuel gave rise to the Industrial Revolution and advanced human civilization. Without it, we would not have landed men on the moon, and modern medical care would not have been possible. But why is carbon now getting such a bad rap?
So when we go back to the idea of carbon as a basic building block of life, when plants and animals die, they actually are sequestering a lot of that carbon. And then when we burn that carbon as part of fossil fuels, so including like coal, for example, oil and natural gas, that carbon gets released back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. But the main reason why we're concerned about carbon dioxide is that in the last 250 years or so, we've actually seen a doubling at the rate at which global temperatures are rising. And scientists have been able to attribute and trace back that warming to the levels of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere.
To show how carbon dioxide aggravates temperature rise in the atmosphere, Angel carries out a simple experiment.
So I have here two identical glass jars and a globe in each of them to demonstrate the Earth. And we'll shine two heat lamps into the jars to resemble the sun. And then on the jar on the right, on your left, I'll add CO2. The globe is moving because the CO2 is being pumped in, and so it's creating a current in the jar and moving the globe.
In just a minute, the temperature in the jar with carbon dioxide rises by 1 degree Celsius.
So this experiment shows that carbon dioxide is trapping some of that infrared radiation that's coming in from these heat lamps or the sun. And so it's similar to greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, trapping some of that radiation that is coming in from the sun, being re-radiated by Earth, and keeping our planet warm.
But this warming effect has been exacerbated by the increasing amount of carbon dioxide emitted into our atmosphere over the past 200 years. Best illustrated by what is known as the hockey stick graph.
A scientist called Michael Mann, he was able to recreate this past 1,000-year historical record of temperature based on paleoclimate records. And so ice core data, for example, where we can take samples of the ice and within the bubbles actually measure the amount of carbon dioxide and then also reconstruct the temperature record. The first 900 years of this temperature record, there was pretty stable temperature. But then starting around 1750 in the Industrial Revolution, we see a huge spike in the temperature.
This temperature rise is still happening today, accelerating Arctic ice melting, leading to rising sea levels and causing more extreme weather events. In 2015, nations big and small came together, pledging to take action on climate change at the Paris Agreement. They arrived at a landmark decision to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. Judging by recent data, this target looks unreachable.
Right now, we're about at 1.1 degrees Celsius. In order to have any chance of meeting our 1.5 or 2 degree target, is we need to be able to peak emissions by 2020. And then we have to have global emissions by 2030. And then we need to completely decarbonize by 2050.
For some, time is already running out. Tuvalu, formerly known as the Ellis Islands, is situated in Oceania, midway between Hawaii and Australia. With a total land area of 26 kilometers square, Tuvalu is the fourth smallest nation in the world, with a GDP of $42 million and a population of just over 11,000 people.
I still can't believe that this is the view that I wake up to and could say goodnight to. It's really beautiful out here, and words can't express how grateful I am that I'm from here and this is home for me.
Surrounded by water with palm-fringed beaches, this island nation was once paradise on earth.
So I'm taking you to one of the most beautiful places here in Tuvalu. It used to be one of the beautiful places here, where families used to just come out and use this place for picnic. But over the years, a lot has changed. This is how high the land was before, but it just has been washed away over the years. And with the increasing tide, this is how far it has come in. And this is how much we have lost, and the risk of what we'll continue to lose as well. And it happens all across the beach area here.
In recent years, Tuvaluans have become unwilling participants on the front line of the climate change battle. Tapua Pasuna, Miss Tuvalu 2019, is one of them.
These trees are one of the strongest trees on my island. And if this is how far it has gone, imagine the trees within the island and how much we're going to lose over the years if we do not do anything about climate change. And these increasing storm surges and sea level rise, it's just gonna take away all this land, and it's losing home, it's losing what I hold dear, and words cannot express how sad I am with what is happening.
After returning from studying in New Zealand, Tapua noticed some of her favorite spots, even small islets, have submerged.
It has been a big change, not only to the physical setting of the island, but also what we usually see as summertime. Now we're getting more frequent storms, and the elders on the island are even commenting that it's even more hot now than it was before. Although some of them may not really understand that it is climate change, but they can feel the difference, they can feel the heat.
For many islanders, the storms and sea level rise have taken away more than just picnic spots. They are threatening livelihoods.
The breadfruit tree has to be covered so seawater will not get in. So we have to raise it, cover with a little bit of concrete, cement, stabilize it, and it's okay. This guy is the main food crop, mainstay for Tuvalu. People are buying their own concrete, are doing their own work to adapt. Otherwise, you go without food, go back to the store, to the shops. This is too expensive. It's just unsustainable for a small island like Tuvalu, so you have to adapt.
Enele Sapoaga, Prime Minister of Tuvalu from 2013 to 2019. He led his government in building sea walls, even reclaiming land, to help the country adapt to climate change. But those projects can hardly keep pace with how quickly the sea encroaches upon the island.
even before the science started to emerge and come out to the fore of the front page of the spotlights of the world. Because the people of Tuvalu have been adapting to this matter that has been caused by industrialized countries. And the cost that we are doing picked up by the individual respective families for something that was never caused by these islands, small island countries like Tuvalu. There is no doubt and no question at all. Now it is the stage that we need to ask the world, or the world, especially the industrialized countries, that they must reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. It's just a matter of urgency. There is no more time to wait. Adaptation is not a solution. It's only an intermediary way to give the Tuvaluans or people like those living on atolls a breathing space. But you know, there may come a time that you have nothing to adapt to.
If sea level continues to rise, some predict by 2030, 2,000 Indonesian islands and 20% of Bangladesh would disappear. By year 2100, when sea level rise reaches a projected 1.5 meters, Amsterdam and New York would be underwater. Singapore won't be spared either. To understand how Southeast Asia might be affected, regional sea level rise data is a crucial piece to this puzzle.
So this coral, if this coral had started growing 20 meters out there in deeper water, it would have grown like a nice...
This is where Professor Aaron Meltzner and his team come in. They study circular colonies of corals called microcoral atolls. The atoll's growth patterns provide clues to where sea level was in the past and helps predict where it's heading in the future.
This distinctly shows points in sea level change that has happened over time. And each of these little grooves is points at which sea level dropped and causing the coral to die to that point. And then sea level rose again, allowing it to come back up to this height.
Good job, guys.
The team has learned that centuries ago, sea level rose rapidly in the Southeast Asia region at a rate that exceeded anything seen in the 20th century.
Corals that we found in Indonesia that look similar to this tell us that about 6,500 years ago, there were fluctuations in sea level across the South China Sea of about 60 cm. And if it happened in the past, it could happen again in the future, or it might even be happening today. And this is something that would be happening on top of any changes globally due to climate change. It means the amount of sea level we could face in the next few decades, in the next century, could actually be much worse than what we're preparing for.
Global sea level has been rising faster in the last few decades than it has been in the last few thousand years. Aaron fears that people are not prepared for what is coming.
When you hear about, oh, just a few centimeters, you know, it doesn't sound bad. But let's think about the floods that happened in Orchard Road in 2010. We had an intense downpour that coincided with extreme high tide. As sea level rises, these events that 10 years ago were extraordinary are going to become ordinary. The more sea level rises, the less rain you need, the lower the tide needs to be for flooding to occur.
Left unchecked, climate change will have a disastrous impact on Singapore. At the current rates, by year 2100, Singapore could lose $2 billion worth of land to the rising sea. And the melting Arctic ice caps could open up the northern sea route, shortening the journey between Europe to Northeast Asia by 33%, threatening Singapore's competitiveness as a global sea hub. It's clear that we are facing a crisis. It's year 2100. Global average temperature has risen over 3 degrees Celsius, leading to a sea level rise. Compounded with heavy rainfall, this could be the scenario we face. It's a scenario not too far removed from reality as far as projections go, but something the Singapore government is fighting to prevent, pledging $100 billion to fight climate change. With measures like raising and strengthening the tidal gates and dikes at reservoirs, building the new airport terminal more than 5 meters above sea level, and even building polders, a Dutch invention, to reclaim land that might potentially be lost to the rising sea. All these are humans' ingenuity to adapt to the changing climate. But they won't solve the root problem, our unquenchable thirst for energy. What about tackling climate change at its core by reducing carbon emission?
Can you imagine that it's in this day and age, Singapore is still running diesel buses? I mean, I need a mask just to stand here. And we're only electrifying 100% of our buses by 2040. Shenzhen did it in 5 years. Singapore can do so much better.
Stop using fossil fuel and switch to renewable energy. This is the mantra of the angry clean energy guy, Asad Razouk.
If you had electric buses, electric taxis, and biking lanes, everybody would be better off. There are no losers except maybe 2 or 3 oil and gas companies.
Assad runs a renewable energy company headquartered in Singapore, financing, building, and operating projects across Asia. A former banker investing in the energy industry, Assad had to visit project sites in the region. One such trip to Taiyuan in Shanxi, China, became his wake-up call.
It was and it still is, the coal capital of China. And it was evident just looking at the citizens there, what fossil fuels are doing to the skin of the population, to the teeth of the population, and to the general health of the population.
And when his company tried to build solar plants in Bangladesh, they couldn't find an appropriate plot of land because of floods.
Similarly, in the Philippines, when you're planning a solar power plant, you have to take typhoons into account. And they are getting more extreme each year. And so you see it with your own eyes, and therefore you can't sit and then pretend that climate change is not a thing. Sonia, hi.
Experiences like those fired up Assad's fervor to rid the world's addiction to fossil fuels. His weapon of choice, the Angry Clean Energy Guy podcast.
It's now clear which side it's mostly on. And that side is not your children or grandchildren. It's the oil executives and their short-term bonuses. We've had climate talks.
Assad sees clean energy not only as a way to combat climate change, but also as a huge business opportunity.
So a green economy promotes growth, and the current economy destroys value. And you can see that all around you in how much we're paying for the climate change impact. We also know that new energy jobs, renewable energy jobs, are created at a ratio of 7 to 10 times more than oil, gas, and coal jobs. The biggest profit opportunity of the next couple of decades is the climate-driven green transformation of our entire economy and lifestyles.
Dr. Veronica Shabunko from the Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore, or SERIS, has a good idea of how that change might look like. Veronica is showing 2 architects some new building facade materials at the test lab developed and managed by the School of Design and Environment at the National University of Singapore.
it's quite a limited space where you can place photovoltaics on a rooftop. So I thought, why don't we think out of box and put PV on the facades to achieve zero energy buildings.
Known as Building Integrated Photovoltaic Systems, or BIPV, these materials are capable of generating clean energy to help power the very buildings they cover.
For instance, semi-transparent technology that can be used in a fenestration or window application. We have colored photovoltaics like blue and gold, black, all white, and digital printed technology.
So maybe it can be a little bit more integrated with the other types of building materials. For example, in facade work, maybe it's integrated with aluminum cladding, etc.
Replacing conventional building materials with photovoltaic products can help accelerate the deployment of solar energy in densely built-up urban environments.
The electricity that is generated can be fed into the grid directly, or can be used for the building needs, or can be stored in a battery. We have about 160,000 buildings in Singapore that can implement some sizable portion of BIPV to make our community more sustainable and green, and understand how much we can get from the free sun available in our daily life.
Another surface that has shown potential in capturing the sun's energy is water. This is the world's largest floating solar panel testbed, housing 10 different photovoltaic systems across 1 hectare.
It looks like the wind condition is a bit mild, but that is not too bad. So, but still we will be having a good performance from the cooling effect.
Designed and constructed by Ceres, this testbed is a collaboration between Singapore's Economic Development Board and National Water Agency, PUB. The mission: to evaluate the performance of different solar systems and their impact on the environment.
So in Singapore, it is difficult to find huge pieces of land or rooftop that is available and suitable for large-scale solar deployment. Hence, we look to the reservoirs.
Turns out, water actually does provide a friendly environment for the photovoltaic panels.
They get unobstructed sunlight across the year, which adds into the performance of the PV system. In addition to that, PV systems likes to be cool, and their performance increases because of the cooling effect created by the water body underneath the panels.
So far, after more than 3 years of trials, not only has there been minimal impact on the environment, but the results of the solar systems have been promising.
Floating PV systems perform around 5 to 15% higher energy performance than a typical rooftop system in Singapore.
The amount of energy generated is able to power the equivalent of 200-odd 4-room HDB flats in Singapore per year. We do see the importance of floating solar in helping us to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So by mid-2020, we will be seeing 2 floating solar projects in Bedok Reservoir and Lower Seletar Reservoir. By 2021, we will see a large-scale floating PV. It will be at least 50 times in size and capacity, just adjacent to this test bed.
The future for floating PV is bright.
This is how the future could look like. Rows of solar panels floating along the Straits of Johor between Singapore and Malaysia, generating over 6,000 megawatt hours of renewable energy annually. By 2030, Singapore wants to ramp up its solar capacity to 2 gigawatt peak, enough to power around 350,000 households, or about 4% of the country's total electricity demand today. Floating solar could play a major role in meeting this target. But as Singapore's overall energy demands keep rising, all these could do little more than offsetting the growth. The rail challenge. can we displace our fossil fuel demands altogether? Inside these tiny granules is densely packed matter of the most abundant and lightest element in the universe, hydrogen. This white powder is a complex metal hydride, a compound of metal and hydrogen, and is developed in the Advanced Institute for Materials Research Lab at Tohoku University in Japan.
2種類の金属水素化物があります。一つは水素が金属同士の隙間に入るといったタイプのメタルハイドライドです。もう一つが鎖体水素化物、英語ではコンプレックスメタルハイドライドと言われているもので、それは水素とその周辺の金属元素、他のエレメントと強く結合している。なのでこういったたくさん水素が入った状態が保持できます。でこれが水素を高密度に貯蔵したという状態になります。
Professor Shinichi Orimo is fascinated with hydrogen and has been studying it for the last 3 decades.
私が水素に興味を持っているのはやはりエネルギーキャリアとしての魅力です。水素は水から作ってエネルギーを取り出してまた水に戻るという非常にきれいな美しいエネルギーサイクルを示すことができるからです。
Hydrogen has great potential as a clean and efficient energy source. But there's a problem. It's highly combustible and has to be stored in high-pressure tanks for transportation, for now. Orimo's metal hydrides are about to change the game.
このような粉末状態でコンパクトかつ安全に水素が貯めれるようになるといろんなところに水素を持ち運ぶことができます。で例えば高圧ガスが使えないようなところも含めてさまざまな水素の適用範囲それが広がるということがポイントです。
While Orimo's complex metal hydride requires further development, as the hydrogen stored within can only be activated when the powder is heated up to over 200 degrees Celsius, his other type of metal hydride is already in practical use in Singapore.
This system takes electricity from the solar panels into the electrolyzer, where the electrolyzer splits water into both oxygen and hydrogen. And the hydrogen can be used later on through the fuel cell to generate electricity. But when it is not needed, it is then stored into this place where there are metal hydride tanks that stores the hydrogen. Within there, these 2 compartments, you would be able to store 27 equivalent tanks of hydrogen that you can see over there, and 15 times less pressure than those hydrogen tanks. And that is because of this little metal hydride compound here.
When power is needed, the stored hydrogen is slowly released and passed through fuel cells to generate electricity.
This test bed is able to fully power this building over here off the grid continuously. We are able to operate 24/7 in our building here with 0 emissions.
The Singapore Power Training Center is the first zero-emission building powered by green hydrogen in Southeast Asia.
This system currently uses electricity in the solar panels to break down water to get the hydrogen. But imagine a future where we are able to import green hydrogen from countries that has excess renewables.
Climate change is a global issue, and sometimes solutions have to come through collective measures. This technological innovation might just help boost such possibilities.
Khu vực bên này là trạm nhà máy vận hành. Hiện tại nhà máy em có khoảng 400 nhà máy hiện tại có khoảng 449.000 tấm pin. Các tấm pin của chúng ta là tấm pin một chiều. Sau khi nó qua 2 cái inverter, em thấy 2 cái inverter phía trước mặt là nó sẽ chuyển từ dòng điện một chiều của tấm pin sang dòng điện xoay chiều. Là dòng điện 2 chiều á. Mấy em có được học dòng điện xoay chiều chưa? Rồi.
Just over a year ago, these students from Tran Hung Dao Secondary School in Vietnam would have encountered a completely different landscape here.
Around 1 year ago, this land was the natural rocky forest. It have a lot of rock, shock tree, and nowadays we have a forest 49,880 PV module. With this solar farm can generate 20 million kilowatt hour average every month, and we can serve for around 100,000 households in this local area.
Ninh Thuan province is among the least developed regions in Vietnam, but it happens to have two things in abundance: space and sunshine.
In terms of sun isolation, it is the highest. It's almost a good 20% above Singapore's sunshine availability. So naturally, it is a very good place to install solar farms.
Wednesday night out, staying in Ho Chi Minh.
Frank Puan saw potential on this land. Along with his business partner, he embarked on an ambitious 168 megawatt peak solar farm at My Son commune in Ninh Thuan. Initially, the project was met with some skepticism from the locals.
Thì cũng cảm thấy cũng nghĩ sợ có độc hại, sợ nóng. Người ta cũng nói là tia phóng xạ đồ, pin đồ đó là có thể độc hại vô nước nữa. Nghe nói vậy, nhưng mà bây giờ thì cũng chưa thấy gì.
Anxieties faded once the solar farm went into operation. The project brought clean energy to the community, along with newly paved roads connecting My Son to the rest of the province. It also brought jobs.
And this is a combination of both social and economic impact. And social impact is basically creating better access to better infrastructure for poor people in this part of the world. Economic impact, we focus on local job creation, and that's both during construction and subsequent operation.
More than 2,000 workers were hired during construction. And when operations began, 35 permanent positions were created.
Singapore plays a very important role to basically apply its knowledge in various different sectors across ASEAN, ranging from project finance, legal services, as well as engineering consultancy, and particularly in the renewable energy sector.
Solar farms like this in Ninh Thuan could potentially become part of a regional ASEAN power grid, connecting countries rich in renewable energy resources to those with high energy demands.
In fact, in between Malaysia, Johor, and Singapore, there is already power cables. So having power systems in Malaysia and having that power transferred to Singapore, I think is entirely possible. So it's really up to political will to make this happen. Technically, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
When neighboring countries come together to complement each other's supply and demand, we might just be able to cut our ties to fossil fuels.
Now, じゃあ血圧を測りますので、左腕をここの穴に通してください。はい、腕を抜いてください。まあちょっとですね。少し高いですけど大丈夫です。はい。
Okutama Forest, Japan. These visitors are not here for a hike or a nature tour. Kenichi Kobayashi is a certified forest therapy guide and he's taking them for a restorative 2-hour therapy session known as Shinrin Yoku, or forest bath.
これがヒノキです。じゃあこの葉っぱを揉んで匂いを嗅いでください。そうですね。いかがですか？
めちゃくちゃいい。
心が安らぎます。
The towering cypress trees release phytoncide, a substance believed to boost the immune system and relax people.
じゃあこれからサイレントウォークしていただきますので、五感を使って歩いてください。足はチップの上を歩いてますけれども、柔らかい感触を足の裏で感じて、で耳で野鳥の声を聞き、で風を肌で感じ、いいですか？はい、息を吸ってください。止めてください。吐いてください。吸ってください。止めてください。ゆっくり吐いてください。はい、お疲れ様でした。
ありがとうございます。
深呼吸終わってどうですか？
すごいリラックスしますね。
リラックスしましたか？ああ、よかった。ああ、よかった。はい、気持ちよかったですか？
本当だ、減ってます。減りました。あ、だいぶ減りました。だいぶ減りました。あ、すごい。
The practitioners of Shinrin Yoku believe that connecting with nature has a healing effect on the mind and body. Climate scientists know that plants have a healing effect on our Earth.
You look at plants, they do some marvelous things. They actually produce CO2, carbon dioxide, as a result of their respiration. But at the same time, they've cleverly evolved a system called photosynthesis, where they actually absorb carbon dioxide and then produce something useful like food. And at the same time, they actually produce oxygen too, which is great for other living organisms. If human beings disappear from the face of the earth, nature will thrive. But if nature disappears, humans cannot survive.
Dr. Lena Chan, an ecological conservationist, has been called Singapore's Mother Nature.
They not only produce oxygen, sequester carbon dioxide, stock it, but they produce habitats for organisms, as well as actually cool the environment and decrease air pollution and the barrier against noise. And all these ecosystem services provided by nature are all given to us for free.
These ecosystem services can play a powerful role in our fight against climate change.
It is inevitable that we want to actually improve our quality of life. And we start, inventing equipment, machines and everything. And when we use energy for it, we actually then result in the production of carbon dioxide and generation of heat. And we're doing this at a faster rate than we can get rid of them. Natural ecosystems have a way of actually doing things very cleverly. And everything is done holistically and a fine balance that took millions of billions of years to evolve. It is so important that we actually learn from nature how best to actually coexist and synergize with each other.
Taking a leaf from nature's playbook was how this freshwater wetland in the Singapore Botanic Gardens came about. While designing and creating the learning forest, the team studied old maps and discovered that there was once a stream in this area. they decided to bring it back to life.
Remember, there was a flood in Orchard Road, and what happened now is that this wetlands now can actually form as a kind of a reservoir to actually help us contain some of the waters. It added another ecosystem within the Botanic Gardens, created some fantastic habitats for wildlife and freshwater plant species. So all in all, it's really a fantastic thing.
Plants are nature's defense against the excess carbon emitted by humans. And we can give nature a hand in doing so. On the shores of Pulau Ubin, an island northeast of Singapore, a team of scientists is trying to do just that. Growing where land and water meet, mangroves are remarkably tough. They live in water up to 100 times saltier than most other plants and can withstand ocean-borne storms, providing habitats for a wide variety of marine and land species.
We think of them as an adaptive, kind of nature-based solution to adapting to climate change. The mangrove consolidate sediment that comes in on the tide. They can help protect coastlines from erosion.
Besides being a frontline defender against sea level rise, mangroves are also exceptional carbon scrubbers, storing up to 3 to 5 times as much carbon as land-based forests.
Mangroves are really good at doing that because their soils are waterlogged. So that means that when leaves fall or branches fall down onto the soil, instead of being broken down by bacteria and things and that carbon being released back into the atmosphere, the carbon stays locked into the soil, say for thousands of years, and it just accumulates and accumulates over time.
And because of that, there's tremendous damage if mangroves are being removed or destroyed. So collecting data to better restore and conserve them has become critical.
It looks great. And we have taken a core that's about 1 meter long or so. We're gonna first start off in the top little bit here to capture recent deposits into the soil. And then we're gonna take a few more segments as we move further down.
This is a soil CO2 flux chamber. Root respiration, just like we respire, plants respire through roots. So there's gases coming out of the soil as well. And understanding how much carbon dioxide comes out of the soil is an important part of understanding the total carbon budget of an ecosystem. You don't want to overestimate what's going in by not attributing for what's coming back out.
Gathering data from areas where mangroves thrive helps scientists recreate conditions to restore these natural climate change defenders.
Restoration of mangroves is notoriously low in success for many different reasons. And so we've been doing some work in Singapore to understand what conditions mangroves need to survive and to grow. And then we can transplant those conditions to a new site happen. We let Mother Nature do the planting instead.
So when we talk about the energetic physical basis of climate change, we have to remember the first law of thermodynamics. Climate change is what is known as a super wicked problem. And there are 4 main reasons why. Time is running out. Secondly, the people who are trying to solve climate change are actually those who are causing it. Well, when you have tens of thousands of people all flying to attend a climate change conference, you're just reinforcing the problem. Third is that there's no central authority. There's not like a global super cop or any type of institution that will punish any actors if they don't follow through. And then I think the last problem, and this is probably the most indicative, is that people have a tendency to irrationally discount the future. And so we have a tendency to say, oh, you know, climate change, that's a problem that our grandchildren can tackle.
But if we do not reduce carbon emission, there will be no future. 2020 is the year when global emission must begin declining, to avoid a temperature rise over 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. Time is running out.
I think people get kind of depressed and you start to fall into this existential crisis, thinking I'm just one person and the climate system is so huge. One effort or one change in my lifestyle that I make is not going to make a huge difference.
Yes, using less plastic helps. Yes, taking less flights help. However, far more powerful is a systemic top-down approach through governments, through the courts, or through the capital markets. We can have a city that's friendlier to pedestrians, to bicycles, to public transport. We can ban single-use plastic. We can mandate a minimum for air conditioning so that we waste less energy on air conditioning, for example. We can ask our sovereign wealth funds to stop investing in fossil fuels around the world.
So the science is out there that, technically speaking, we could generate and meet 100% of our electricity needs through clean energy sources. But the problem is that we don't have governments and we don't have business leaders who are motivated to really make that change happen. And I think that's what the young people are saying. They're saying, stop looking to us for inspiration, actually do something about it.
The solutions are before us. There are ways to rid our carbon addiction by switching to clean energy like wind, solar, hydrogen, and tapping on the Earth's most precious gift to us, nature. But the fight against climate change must go hand in hand with creating a climate for change. Are we ready for the change?